Welcome to what is hopefully our first webinar here. We designed this one just to be kind of a smaller, more informal meeting because we wanted to do a little bit of a project check-in and hear about, kind of have a sort of informal sharing of some of the projects that have been going on this spring and summer, but also test out kind of our ability to do this using Zoom. And I was mentioning to some of the folks earlier on the line that we're going to hopefully put into place more of a like webinar format on Zoom, but right now we're just using their meeting tool, but hopefully that will work fine for today. So just to give you kind of a general idea of what we were thinking about, because it's a nice small group, we're hoping to do just a little bit of a check-in to hear from some of the different sites. We're going to first start with April in Alabama and Ian in New Jersey, because they've both done some different projects that have taken the project in some different directions, which is really exciting to see. I'm also going to share a little bit about a partnership that we had with the Technology Student Association this past year, as well as a board game camp that we ran last week that was really successful and kind of prompted some things that we wanted to share with you all in case you're interested in doing something similar at your site. And then hopefully we'll have some time at the end just for some general Q&A and discussion and sharing about some things that are coming down the pike for Build a Better Book. So if you get a chance, if you're on, if you could introduce yourself in the chat window to the group where you're from. And I'm sure we're gonna have a few other people joining us as we go, hopefully. And we've also recorded this so others can see some of what you guys have been working on. So April is going to kick things off. And April, I think I have control of the slides from my computer, so just let me know when you want me to advance the slides. But April is the technology coordinator for Trussville City Schools in Alabama, and she's been doing all kinds of things with Build a Better Book this spring and summer and sharing a lot of it via Twitter, which is how we've been keeping up to date on what she's been up to. So all right, April, you want to take it away?
Sure. Yeah, so my counterpart Rachel is on this webinar too. So Rachel, you can jump in at any time also. We really feel like we're laying the foundations. We learned a lot from Stacey and the Build a Better Book group to really kind of see what are all the different possibilities. So a lot of laying those foundations. So the first one I want to show you is SpecDrum rings. And so it looks just these little rings that fits on your finger, but it works off of an app on your phone, which is what you see in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. And so it works off of a 12-color palette of 12-color palette. So in one of the apps, a SpecDrum Mix, you can it can be different notes on a piano or on a guitar, anything like that. But what's so interesting about it is you can create your own mix, where I did polar bear, polar bear. So we have, you know, the classic book. Oh, sorry, I touched the mic. We have the classic book. And so we have kids that take field trips to our zoo. So we wanted to build content, prior content, so when they go there, they will have a much richer experience. And so one of that is to add sound, because when you go into our zoo, the very first thing you hear are flamingos, and not a lot of people know that that's what's squawking when they first go in. So we took this book, and you can add your own color. So if you look in the upper left-hand corner, you see a white, then an orange, then a blue. So what I did is I took our book, and I just simply added, let's go to a colored page. I simply added a strip of, my thing zooms in, sorry, a strip of textured paper. And so I have my phone next to me, which is what you see there. And then once I've connected my ring, when you tap on it, because this page says, what do you hear? I hear a lion roaring in my ear. So when they tap I don't know if you guys could hear that. Can you hear my lion? Yeah. Okay, so on every page we've added a sound. So on the line we've also started adding texture. So we used a 3D pen. You could also add fabric. So just say touch. And so the kids can go through. We did add Braille to it, so handy dandy slate and stylus with clear tape that we we learned. So we added the Braille and added that texture. And what's nice about it is the kids can go back and hear, if they really like to hear the snake, they can go back and play it multiple times. It's a long boa constrictor. But you record your sounds. You can, the majority of the sound files I found online for free. And right now the way to record is you open up the editor mode on the screen you see on the left there, and you choose a color, and it says add sound. And so I literally just said play on my, when I was on the file on my computer, and I held my phone up to it. I've held an iPad up to it. Or you can record yourself. So on this page it says, I hear a zookeeper. I cannot whistle, but I have 2 guys in my department who can. So you can record yourself. So you can record up to 10 seconds for every color that you have assigned to it. What is so awesome, kind of taking a step back from, and that app is called Spectrum Mix, kind of taking a step back is when you associate a color, it's not just this sheet that I've added to my book. If I were to touch the blue of my shirt, well, so that's hippo. So no matter what I touch, if it's one of the colors that's associated with it, it's going to make that sound. So when I've shared this out with other teachers and groups, they're like, oh my gosh, we can, our whole rooms we could turn into, you know, a jungle or a zoo, as long as we have those colors associated around, and let the kids just explore the sounds of those areas. One of the things that Anne, who is on here with us, had talked to us about when we were together was, you know, art is so much a look, don't touch. And so once we were shown these rings, of course I had to get a pair. So now every time I look at stuff, I'm like, oh, I could add sound to that art piece. I don't know if you'll advance to the next slide. I think I have a picture. Nope.
Oh,
well, it's okay. It's okay. There we go. Yeah. So I was in Mobile at our state technology conference, and just walking down the hall, I passed this this art piece, and the fish, I don't know if you can see it as well, but the fish come off of the canvas about 10 inches or 5 inches. And I just thought, oh my gosh, I could code yellow to be the sound of the ocean, and code red to, you know, something else, so that they could kind of see, well, you know, and feel the art versus just stand there and listen to me talk about it, kind of thing. And so once you start looking at different tools and resources, it just is everywhere. You're like, I could do that, I could do that. When I first showed this to our superintendent, she said, can you code it so that the kids could feel the American flag? So white be one thing, red be one thing, and blue be another. So that's a challenge I'm going to give to some student groups that I will be working with this year. All right, if you can go back to that previous slide. So we have, this is 2 groups of students, our teams, that's our seniors, and Stacey's going to talk a little bit later about this, but part of their engineering project was to create children's books for our state competition. And so the girls were doing it, and I just happened to go, hey, y'all are doing tactile books. I've been learning about tactile books. Can we hang out together? And so their teacher organized it, and we got together, and I wheeled in my orange suitcase that Stacey and them gave us, and I cracked it open, and it's like, let me show you. And so the Spectrum rings, and so I was touching stuff. They're like, oh, we want that in our books. And so we were actually able to organize a field trip. So 2 days later, they came to my office, and for the whole day they worked on their books. And so I gave them more time with the Spectrum ring. So you'll see pictures in the lower left where they were cutting out their strips to add to it. They also used 3D pens. So you'll see in the upper right for the book about Millie, that's architecture that Millie flies over to prove to the boy bird that she can be an architect. But so all the bridges and everything also have the texture that she used with a 3D pen. And so really there's so many things that are available for us to use. It's just knowing about them and brainstorming ideas. How could this work? How could this work? And I think that's what Build a Better Book has done for us. We're all kind of using similar things, and we're a very active community on Twitter. So if you're not following at Build Better Book, you definitely need to follow that. Okay,
April,
listen.
can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Was that for the Technology Student Association?
It is at our State Department. And the girls on the right that wrote the Millie book, theirs did actually win first place, but they did not take it to a national level. They just stopped at the state level. I was like, why not? Everybody would love to see Millie. And they actually competed in like 4 different competitions this year, and
Wow.
so they chose to go to a different competition that they went to. But I have their book, and I carry it around with me and show it off at our different technology meetings and things like that. So, but one of the girls in the right-hand picture that has the curly hair, her mom is completely blind. And so she was really excited about how to do it. The blonde girl on the upper left, her cousin is completely blind. So they had deep needs and wants to do it. And they actually asked, can we take the SpecDrums home for a weekend? Each of them got a pair to use. So they took them home and had their mom play with it, their cousins, and then just the rest of the family. They were like, do we really have to give these back? And I said, you can have them one more week, but you need them back. And so, but what Rachel is a phenomenal librarian at our middle school. She was able to get a class elective to be offered next year for 7th and 8th graders. It's a year-long class. It meets every single day, and they're going to do some phenomenal work with it. But at curriculum night was kind of where you sell your electives to people. She and I were at a table we had set up for this and explaining. And so we had the SpecDrums, we had this book, we had lots of other things, and it garnered a lot of attention. We were just hoping that the class would make. And not long after that, Rachel contacted me and said, hey, we're having to turn away people. There's that much interest in it. And so the counselors were even getting calls by parents saying, I was so hooked on what y'all are going to do in this class. Can we do something too? So we're trying to work out and schedule some community build days so that the parents can come in with their children and can build for a purpose. So, just one spark and one conversation, you never know where that's going to go. So definitely have those conversations. I think I have one more slide after the fish picture. Yes. Okay. So, we have had a 3D printer for over a year before I got in touch with Build a Better Book, but we had really not done a lot with it because I didn't want to just make little trinkets. I wanted things to have a purpose and a cause. And so when we started on this journey, aha moments came, and some of it was through people sharing or just jumping on Thingiverse. So here are 3 different pictures. So the one on the left is I worked with some high school students who are in an alternative graduation program. So they work at kind of their own different paces and things like that. And so I asked them, hey, do you want to help me out? Here's what we're doing. So in this picture, when Lego announced that they were going to make Braille Legos, we were super excited. But also that same day or a few days later, Pasta Literacy put out a blog saying, we already have files for Braille that you can print yourself. And I'm like, well, daggum, I'm not going to wait until Lego deems I'm worthy to get one. My kids are worthy today. So this is the 2 boys that were downloading the files, putting them on, multiple files on and getting them started. And so we made one set. The kids were super excited. We're going back and adding felt at the top to orient it for our kids. And we showed it to 2 elementary parents that have students that are 5th grade moving up to 6th. They're like, this would have so much helped us when our kids were learning Braille. And they're like, but do you know, if I'm doing spelling words, things like that, 1 alphabet's not going to get me. So they wanted 6 sets of the complete alphabet. And so we were able to print those 6 sets, and we got a fishing tackle box donated, 2 of them, and got them organized. And the boys were super excited because they see value in what they were creating. The middle picture, when you print 3D, sometimes they're just very rigid. And so I just happened to see on Thingiverse, the feature was an articulated slug. I was like, oh, that's cool. It moves. So the thing, with Build a Better Book, what hit me so much too is they talk about how we're in a book famine, and we really are. Some data says that only 10% of the books available are accessible to those who are visually impaired, and so I focus a lot on our books. And this is the 50th anniversary of the Very Hungry Caterpillar. That goes along great with our kids are going to go to the zoo and things like that. We have a beautiful butterfly garden in our zoo, but you can never have a child hold a butterfly because it's so delicate. So I went on out and just looked, and lo and behold, there was an articulating butterfly, and that's what the white is up top. And so you can actually, it's packed somewhere because I just came back yesterday from a training, but the wings will move and will flap. So they can hold it and feel this is what a butterfly's wings would feel like when it's moving. I also printed a green caterpillar. I made it really large and realized that's probably not the right size. I need to slim him down just a little bit. But just to give the kids, being able to touch beyond just something added to our paper, being able to have those additional resources so that they could retell the story, or they could really feel what it looks like. So super excited to challenge the kids that we're working with next year, because you can find anything on the internet. And so I was like, I want to learn how to make articulated items. And so there's a person on YouTube, I totally forgot his name because it's a weird name, not like a regular name, and he gives you the 3 file pieces to slice things, to punch a hole, and to add a hinge. So you can take anything that's solid and make it articulate, doing that movement. So I know my kids are going to go, that is so cool. We've used the 3D pins before, but it's still kind of rough. So at ISTE, I happened to walk down one aisle, and I'm like, this is my last aisle. I'm so tired and got lots of stuff. And I met 3Doodler guy, and he had, it's kind of hard to see, but in that last picture, what I'm holding in my left hand is the bone structure of a hand. And he has a silicone mold that's a ball and joint. So you make ball and joints and add it to it. This hand, it moved just like the regular bones of a hand. He made it completely with his 3Doodler. It prints at a lower temperature, and so you can actually smooth out the filament to make it really smooth versus it being kind of rough. And I was like, okay, I got to have a 3Doodler now. So and I need that silicone mold. And so those are just some of the ways we've been able to, expand on, yes, we want to add Braille and we want to add texture directly to the book, but can we do other things? Because when we went to Build a Better Book, they had done an owl, mama owl and a baby owl, and so the kids could retell the story with those characters. So you think of your traditional like book bags and stuff like that. So we're super excited. These are prototypes to then spark the ideas of the students we're going to be working with. So Rachel's going to be working with 7th through 8th graders. I've got teams of 3 through 5th grade that will do like 9-week cycles with me, and then I have the high schoolers that I have all year long that meets once a week. So we're super excited about what we can do. And I think I've got one more slide, and I know I'm probably talking too long, so I will speed through this one. Back to the Birmingham Zoo. I contacted them. I was like, hey, I know you do auditory sensories. Let's talk about visual. And they were like, that's interesting because we're trying to do something, and we've contacted our institute. So I met with their education team, Roger and Catherine. They had never seen a Braille slate and stylus, a 3D pen, 3D item, that we had done. They had never seen SpecDrums. So they were super excited. I even had Roger Braille his name and put it on his tag. So that has sparked a lot of conversations and projects that we have going on. But Catherine they already had some money from a grant. And so she has built sensory boxes for 4 key areas of our zoo. So that's a sensory box for the Alabama barn. Alabama barn. And so it had several things in it that are tactile for them, and it has a script so that whoever is with the visually impaired person can read that script to them. And there's 4 that fits in a backpack that you can check out when you come in. You can say, I'd like to check out the vision bag, and it's a rolling backpack, and you roll it around the zoo and do. So they're going to really roll that out at our educators night coming up. So we're all kind of learning and working together. So that's something too, is not only think about the books that are in your school, but where are you taking kids on field trips this year, and what could you do to enhance that experience before they go, while they're there also. So that's kind of hit us pretty hard too, of we go a lot of places, and how can we make that experience as in-depth and supportive to the learning of our students who are visually impaired. So long-winded, but I had a lot to share. So thank you for letting me share.
That sounds amazing. Can I just ask you and Rachel, how many middle school students are you planning to have in your elective next year?
Rachel, do you want to unmute and ask? Because I don't know what the roster count is right this moment.
All right, I was trying to unmute. Well, I asked about it the other day, and they have told us that they're not rolling the rosters out for us until August the 1st. So I'm not entirely sure yet, but as soon as I know, I'll throw a tweet out there and let you guys let you know for sure.
Great. That is so exciting because, I think we always have this issue where we have the kids for just a short amount of time, and they come up with a great initial prototype, but then we want to give them opportunities to iterate on their design and really get it to a point where we feel excited about sharing it with families. So the fact that you'll have kids for a longer time where they can really go through that process is very exciting.
I'm excited to kind of mesh our whole experience that we had up there with you guys of the design process and giving them time to go through iterations of what they create, and working with the students that we have in our building with low vision challenges to try and make it as good as we can get it for them.
That is really exciting. I just noticed in the chat you asked a question about whether Sphero has worked out a way to share the sound file packs. So what's interesting is they do in the other app. So not in the SpecDrums Mix app, but in the kind of main SpecDrums app, there is a way to share the sound pack once you've created it. The problem is creating the sound pack doesn't seem to be quite as streamlined in that app as it looks a lot easier in SpecDrums Mix, April. And I haven't done much with that other app. So we will definitely kind of push them on that. They were responsive initially about getting out that ability to, in the main app, you can actually export a QR code. It's like a SpecDrum specific QR code, which we really love the possibility of, because then if a family had a SpecDrums ring, we could just share a QR code digitally, and then that would be good for a particular book. So I think that possibility is there, but I'll need to talk with them about the Mix app, because the Mix app looks really a little bit more streamlined for assembling a sound pack.
I talked to them at ISTE several times, and then I had a playground where I showed it to them. I said, go talk to them and then tell them what you want to do. So we just reiterated how important that is to be able to share those sound packs. Because right now what we're doing.
Who was there at ISTE? Was it?
The lady that,
okay.
I forget her name right this second. I can't remember. The one that came out to us.
What's that?
The lady that came out and showed it to
Yeah.
us. She was there demoing it all day long, both days. So
we had one other issue with the other app, so they were working on a bug in the other app for us. But we've been really full up with summer camps this summer. But as soon as summer slows down, they're on our list to follow up with, because it's real. I'm sure they were really excited though to see some of the things that you've been doing with the rings, because I know they're really interested in how it can be used as an accessibility tool.
Yeah, so right now what we do is we just have a iPad mini that is always checked out, or that is checked out with the SpecDrums rings, so that we can, share the files. Right now that's our best option.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Great. Well, thank you so much, April, for sharing all that. I want to move on to, here's another great slide from the field trip. I love this idea of with a destination.
Yeah, I put that in there to show too, but Ian is the master of makey, so he's going to talk a little bit more too, but just building that conceptual knowledge before they go. So I got the physical printed map from the zoo and started adding the texture of where you would walk, and it's not hey, here's what you hear here. Is how we do read alouds with kids, and we read something and go, what do you think? So that's what we kind of did, is what do you hear? And had a 3-second pause, and then it would start something else. Say, when you go into the reptile room, you're going to hear lots of things. Think about this. Think about this. We look forward to hearing what you did, you know. So it was more of trying to get them to interact and kind of see how they're going to travel when they get there. So it's much more comfortable for them. So that's that project that we started.
So have you had a chance to test out some of these resources with students yet?
Not because our visually impaired have been, over the summer, they have classes that they have to go to, but they were like, we got to do this, we got to do this. So we've played with it with students who are not visually impaired. And so just to kind of see, did you like this? Did you like the feel of this? And so we'll be able to get cranking in about 2 weeks with our kids.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Asking for a lot of feedback. I did have 2 of the visually impaired parents. We did the maps and we had bought a pee-off machine. And so we started, Neil challenged everybody kind of to, hey, map your school for your kids. And so that one we have been able to test, and we've gone through 3 different stages of it. So that's been beautiful also.
Oh, that's awesome. And just a quick note about, since you were talking about the 3-doodler pen, that start pen that's in the picture on the screen, and we'll talk a little bit about them later on too. But Neil has mentioned he uses that often with students who are blind or visually impaired, and that because it is a lower temperature pen, it is safe for them to use, so they can actually use it themselves.
Yes. And you can buy that one from you can buy that one from Michael's, and they have, the 20 or 40% off coupon. So you can get that one for $26.
Oh, good tip
there. Just a tip. You can buy it from them, but you can also Amazon or, whatever. And we don't have to do this next slide. I threw that in there because.
No, it's a great example showing students adding Braille to cards.
We use cards for a lot of math, different things. So we had the card deck, so why not add Braille?
Nice. All right. And Ian, this is the picture that I had for you, which I love. So
I make you shirt.
Kind of tell a lot in one image. So that's great.
Yes.
Ian has had a really amazing partnership with a computer science teacher this spring that he is going to share with us.
Yes. Thank you very much, Stacey and April. I will tie my presentation into what April was speaking about with 3D printing. There is so much that you can do, purposeful, meaningful work with the 3D printer. I also started in the last 2 months using TPU or NinjaFlex. Some people call it. I think NinjaFlex is just a different brand of TPU, but it's the flexible filament. So it's the same kind of stuff that you would use on your phone, the rubbery plastic. And if you Google it, people make it seem like you need like 4 different doctoral degrees to be able to with it. But you do not. You don't even need a heated pen. You can print with a $200 machine and it prints fine. So it's definitely something to look into because it's nice. It's actually squishy. And I don't have one over here right now. Actually, one just finished printing behind me. But it's really good in terms of just a different type of texture and the fact that you can kind of squeeze it for different sensory feel. And you can also control the feel of it because the more fill you put in there, the harder it's going to be and more or less squishy. So it's just something to look into. Again, if you Google it, it may seem like kind of like, wow, can my machine handle this? Even a machine doesn't say it can handle TPU. It can. You can definitely reach out to me and get some pointers. But I just wanted to bring that up. That I think it's another cool, not just cool, but like really useful, functional material that's a little more expensive than PLA, but not too bad. And I think Stacey was saying in terms of like prototyping, and then it's great, kids prototype and they learn, but how can we actually get some of these projects to families to really use and then kind of make almost into like a final product that could be used by multiple students, visually impaired students and families. And my collaboration with the computer science teacher at Mountain Lakes High School here in New Jersey was great. I got to spend 12 or 13 days with 2 AP computer science classes. So these students definitely know programming. Some of them were seniors, some were 10th graders, some 11th graders. About 18 students in each class, so about 36 students altogether. Pretty good mix between boys and girls, which was great to see. And you know, they definitely know they learn how to program and processing, which is a version of Java, Scratch, App Inventor, which is just on the Android still. I don't think it's on Apple. And, you know, we gave them a challenge to learn and to work on creating a digital plus physical game book application. So use their advanced programming skills, but not just to program away, but, you know, how do you actually take an idea of like a physical game like blackjack and make it a digital interactive physical game. So we discussed with them, again, each class period is around 42 minutes. So and it was the end of the year too, summer was coming. So we did a lot in the beginning in terms of physical prototyping, 3D printing, 3D pen, vinyl cutter, which is great for quick prototyping, especially when you do not have a laser printer on hand. But it definitely is proof of concept. So eventually when you say, hey, I really have something that's going to work and I want to use balsa wood, the vinyl cutter is a great way to actually prototype for proof of concept. And of course, the makey to do really simple prototyping in a short period of time. So we'll go to the next slide. So we had 15 projects.
Right.
And, you know, we said, how can, you know, when I speak with Brandon Horn was the teacher I worked with, and he's been awesome. We're actually going to continue the projects in September, which I'm really excited. As a collaboration, I'll go into the classroom with him and work on it through September and October. And so when Brandon and I discussed, you know, the project, and he had some experience, he did, I think, like workshops at Google, and he actually had a visually impaired mentor at Google. So it was really nice that he actually had some experience working with the visually impaired, and he's an excellent programmer himself. So we discussed what can programming provide, user customization, but at the same time, standardization. How can we actually take a project and make it so we can then distribute eventually to lots of different kids and families who would, you know, benefit. With programming, you can access, especially once I had a long discussion with him about it, you can convert all types of data and sensory inputs into almost anything you want with a computer, whether it's listening to sound, looking at a picture, you know, having Arduinos listen, or Arduino sensors that pick up on heat sensors. There's all kinds of ways to attach Arduinos and pick up basically any type of sense, and then use a computer to figure out what you want to do with that data. You know, we connect to all types of interactive devices, and most importantly, how do you just take a program and make it universally designed for visually impaired and sighted, especially low vision impaired, including high contrast colors for students with low vision. So we discussed this with all the students, and it was great. We had Neil and Leslie and Eli on one time. They were great for both classes, and they took all questions, and they were really helpful because we did not have the opportunity yet to work with visually impaired students directly, which we're going to do this fall. So just talking though with Eli, Neil, and Leslie was really helpful. So the projects were really broken down into 3D printer-driven design, keyboard interaction plus programming, tablet app with multiple physical overlays, physical game plus digital with QR or OCR technology, interactive sounds, and unique. So I'll go over kind of each of the main projects and discuss how we will, you know, students can possibly work on them in the new year. So project, that's good. We're going to the next slide. Okay. Project iteration and progression. It was really great to see students, I mean, they're high school students at the end of the year, but it was really great to see that just without really going on a whiteboard and introducing Stanford's 5-step design process, a lot of the kids just get it. You know, this group did zero programming, but they worked on 3D design and really understanding a 3D printer settings to create a game of Risk, for a tactile game of Risk. And you can see on the left, their first version, you know, they used a 3D pen, definitely rough, and you can see some of the pieces, they were definitely unstable, too small. And then on the right, they threw a lot of work in understanding how a 3D printer works. They really came up with a nice design, these little pink square cubes, so when you stack the pieces, they're stable. and they worked on different ways to make them more tactile but obviously different for each different type of piece. And they stack really well, and they're not going to easily fall over. So I was really proud of that group. So even though there was no programming specific in that group, they actually designed with Tinkercad and learned all about 3D printer settings, which is important because, like April was showing, there's a lot of different ways to use 3D printer. And if you can really understand the 3D printer settings, you can make really good final products. So that was one version. Keyboard interaction plus programming. A lot of the groups focus on typing or music. And for their interactive device, they said, okay, they're going to focus mostly on programming, but they wanted to use the keyboard to start as their interactive device for simple prototyping. And so they use Java or processing most of the time, and they put in Braille for typing type games, or they put in different types of chords and musical notes to come up with different ways for students to learn what a note is, what a chord is. Could they record their own music that they're playing and they can play it back? And we just used a vinyl cutter, and we designed a simple thing for the keyboard. So you can put these little vinyl stickers on and then just using the Braille and a stylus. So we have high contrast colors and we have some Braille there. I looked for keyboard covers online, very expensive, not customizable. So using the Cameo and the vinyl cutter was pretty simple to create that. This one was really interesting, the tablet overlay concept plus app inventor. So the concept here is to take a tablet, one that's probably bigger than this, but we use these, that's what we had in class. So using App Inventor, which is through MIT, but I think it's only on the Android right now, you can control the pixels on the screen. So the students designed, let's say in this case, a maze. Now the maze, you go from green to red in the very left photo. And then what they did is they printed that maze with a 3D printer, or you could use a vinyl cutter. They really, really, really wanted to learn how to use a 3D printer, so it was fine. But in the future, to do quick prototyping, probably a 3-minute cardstock or chipboard with the vinyl cutter is probably just a simpler way. And then as you can see on the very right, you put the maze on top of the tablet. And then you can see that this one's a little problematic because you can't use your finger. You just have to be able to use the pencil. But obviously, it's just still a rough draft. But the idea here is that the student can swap out multiple mazes. So it's not just a one-time game and that's it. You can keep, obviously you can print lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of mazes. And all of a sudden you have this, what we call tablet overlay concept. Probably needs a better name, but somebody else was working on a shoots and ladder game with the same kind of concept. And we, Brandon and I have had a lot of discussions about this concept. So we're hopeful at least one of the student groups this September will take up this idea and continue to work on it. So that's another way. Interactive games. One group was working on Scrabble, and we really stressed simplicity because to really remake completely Scrabble, during a high school class, it was going to be difficult. But they got the idea, and then they started with just a 3x3 board, and they were using QR codes. And they did a lot of work using processing. So I don't have the code over here, but on the Google Drive for Build a Better Book, we have all the code for all these games. So when Brandon and I introduce all the projects that were worked on in May and June to the new students in September, they're going to look at them. They can actually pull up the code, look at the pictures. Each group made a 2 to 3 minute video of their project in action. So they did a lot of good work, so it's documented. So you could see these tiles have bare letters. They use QR codes to scan the letters. And they added different ways to verify that it's a real word. They were going to add a dictionary to it. Another idea for this type of game would be use the OCR technology, just like when you're driving now and you could, the car knows what the speed limit is on the road. The same kind of technology where if you had like an overhead, simple overhead projector, put your phone on top of it, and then while you're playing the game, it would always know what it would be able to calculate your score and know where the pieces are and do a lot of different things, including, sounds and dictionary words. Let's see, the next type of game, interactive sounds using Makey Makey. You can see the Scratch in the background, which Scratch is great for programming. Now, at some point, I think this type of game, which is really cool, should be migrated to processing, and I'll explain why in a second. But you can see that they had the little shoebox for prototyping and little copper tape. And this was a cool game. It was interactive sounds. It's not a video, even though it looks like it is a video. And the idea was it was a sound game plus understanding sequencing. So for little kids learning different sounds and understanding sequencing, it was a game. So you listen to a horse sound, a dog sound, cat sound, pig sound. And then you would have to click on different keys to get the sequence correct.
It's kind of like an audio Simon game, wasn't it?
Yes, exactly. And what's really great is I think with advanced programming skills, you could take this concept and then port it and build it out in processing or Java. Because what I learned from Neil and Leslie and Eli and Build a Better Book, that sounds are obviously really important to visually impaired students, especially younger visually impaired students, but there's really no universal sound library. So especially for a school or even a family at home, you know, AP programming students are able to make a simple GUI, a graphical interface, where parents could actually record their own sounds. So then all of a sudden you can have your own sounds inputted into the sequence game. Obviously, it's still a little more challenging to put it all together, a longer term project, but it's definitely something that you can prototype with Scratch and then say, okay, this works. Let's get visually impaired students in here to work with us. They like the concept, awesome. How do we make it so we can actually have more than 5 sounds? We can actually program it professionally so it has 40 sounds, and then parents at home or teachers can add their own sounds. Like, this is a knife cutting bread. This is me shooting a basketball and hitting the backboard. This is me shooting basketball and hitting the rim. This is a swish. How do you do that? You can do that with programming, advanced programming skills. So I think that's one of the ways where having this type of perspective for Build a Better Books is just, you know, different, but, you know, can go in a different direction. And then the next type of game, unique programming applications. So we definitely had some groups work on unique things. I'm going to start with the right-hand side, the image reader. So this actually was just one student who was working on reading images. So in this case, he was learned through, I think this was Java, reading all the pixels. And in this case, it read the dominant color is green. So it said, I see a forest, I see a forest, I see a forest. So the idea is, again, you know, what if you had, and it made me think when April was discussing the painting that she saw, the 3-dimensional painting, that let's say you had a painting and you're obviously on a computer screen, and you had a Monet painting which has a lot of colors in it. Potentially you could have this type of program read the colors and just say, this is a warm painting, this is a cold painting. I'm sure Anne could, you know, describe different ways to visually describe paintings better than I am right now, other than warm and cold. But I'm sure that, you know, with this type of technology, which obviously exists, students can work on understanding pixels and images, and then provide some type of application or better experience online for visually impaired students or you know, adults. Including, my idea was weather, right? You can look on your weather app and it says, oh, it's going to be partly cloudy or whatever. But my idea was to put like a camera on top of a building and just always look at the sky, so there's not too many colors, and it would always be reading and say the sky is gray, it's blue now, it's been blue, but it's been changing to gray over the last 30 minutes. So it'll give you a real sense of what the color of the sky is for the day. That was my idea, but we'll see. Just one idea. And then, I don't know, Stacey, if it'll work. Can you click on and play that video?
Yeah.
Let's see if it works.
For our Build a Better Book project, we created a software for the visually impaired to create music. To use our music maker, simply drag the mouse from left to right and click on a note that you want. If you would like to go from one note to another, you simply drag the mouse off of the music notes and onto the note you desire. If you click on a note, it will remember the note you clicked on and play it back to you later.
When you click the C button on the keyboard, it will begin the playback. That is their project.
So, you know, at first I was a little confused by the direction of the project, but, you know, Brandon and I, we definitely like the idea. I mean, obviously it needs a lot of work and it's right, just a black bar, which is not very helpful, but just seeing the students able to create something using the mouse and the way they were able to play the notes and record it so you could hear it played back. Like, I think that, you know, it just shows that students are creative, and these students especially didn't have a lot of time to you know, work with visually impaired students. They really just got the one opportunity to speak with Neil, Leslie, and Eli. But I do think that we take something like this project, the students that worked on this project, or all the students obviously, and, you know, look what they can do with their programming skills. I really feel that they can take a book, music, a game, and really be able to create something, not just a prototype, but I feel like an actual work on the point where we can have an application that could be shared with multiple families, which would be the goal. You know, even something like with the mouse music, if you kind of combine image reader and mouse music, you can kind of put your mouse over it and read the different colors, kind of like SpecDrums almost. And then one of my last slides here, facial expressions. I love this one. So this was a group that was a little slow at first, getting started, and we discussed many ideas. And I said, what do you like? And he said, I like to draw. I said, that's awesome. So what they did is they drew on Tinkercad. This was just on Tinkercad. And they made these cards. And on the back were QR scans. And for each one, from left to right, I think was happy, sad, angry, and calm. And you can see there's some Braille on there also. And I was really, really excited for this project. So to 3D print these was pretty quick, actually. And all I did was pause the printer when it was ready to do the expressions and put the new filament in. So overall, it took about, I don't know, 30 minutes for each card. And my idea, you know, in talking with the students was that if you took, like this is a 12-inch by 12-inch piece of cardboard, and you took the cards like this, you can basically fit, you know, I think they're roughly 2 by 3 inches, 3 by 3 or something like that. You could probably fit a total of 12 to 16 cards on here, and you can have a book. Because if you look at most children's stories, there's a standard to it. Like every Mo Willems book is basically, you know, whatever it comes out to over here, my Mo Willems book, 54 pages or something like that. A lot of books, because I read a lot of books with my kids, a lot of books are 32 pages. I think every Fly Guy book is basically the same amount of pages. So in talking with this group, well, although half of the group graduated, you know, I'm hopeful somebody can take up this project, because with just some simple 3D printing, some colors, I think you can come up with a design for a Mo Willems book, and, you know, come up with 16 of these 3D printed cards, put it on some kind of balsa wood laser printed, you know, kind of box that they fit in, and all of a sudden you have like a take along book, kind of one idea. And the great thing is that once you have the 3D STL files, they could be shared anywhere in the world in 5 seconds, right? So depending upon, obviously, if somebody has a 3D printed, print it. I understand it could be a limitation to start, but I really feel like, again, once you add the sound with the QR code, or maybe add the SpecDrums in, you could really hopefully have some kind of pseudo standardized project that could be shared out and could be, you know, printed out by somebody in 4 to 5 hours. So it's just one way we can take this project and add some more programming to it. And then next steps, students are going to review all the projects we worked on, plus the Build a Better book projects that are on the design gallery, and they're going to choose one. Students are very critical of other people's work, so they get to be critical of all the other projects, but then they have to choose one and then take that project and make it better, make it their own. And we're definitely going to work with the visually impaired community this fall, working on getting arrangements with that. And, you know, like I said, the goal is to create usable projects and prototypes that hopefully can be used by multiple people, especially in the prototype phase. And then we have an entrepreneurship class in high school, and I would love to talk to them, which I've already talked to the teacher, about taking on a project to collaboration to figure out how to make a nonprofit to distribute a visually impaired Build a Better Book project. Because right now they have a snack business, which is great. Snacks are good. Everyone loves snacks, but you know, they can do more, and they could work on a website. They could work on understanding what a nonprofit is. They could work with obviously the students working on the projects and figure out how do we actually, you know, come up with ways to get, hopefully when we have a final project, to families that could benefit.
That's awesome, Ian. And actually that ties along really well with something that we're thinking about for this next iteration of Build a Better Book. We're getting ready to submit another proposal to NSF, and one of the things we've been thinking about is something kind of similar in terms of how can we support teams that have had some involvement in a Build a Better Book workshop to continue their involvement in the project, but more as kind of this like maker work crew where they are evaluating designs that have come out of workshops, and they're kind of, you know, assessing which ones have the most potential or which ones would serve the best need, and then figuring out what needs to be done to get this to where it is customer ready, so that it's giving them more of that business entrepreneurship experience, but also filling this need we have where we have all these projects that are getting started, but not all of them taken to completion. So yeah, I'd love to chat with you more about that. We just have a few minutes left, so I'm just going to breeze through really quick to show you some photos of some of this program that we had last week, just real quick. And then, because we want just a couple minutes for questions and some last discussion too. But Rachel, I think as you're getting ready to do a year-long class, games could also be a really fun thing to work on, and having kids for such an extended period of time, they could really make a lot of progress in this area. So we have worked with this one middle school program for the past several summers. They recruit a group of about 16 to 25 students who are primarily first-generation students. They'll be the first in their families to go to college. They do a lot of academic summer programming with them, and so we work with them for 1 week out of the summer. And so this year we decided to have our program with them focus on Build a Better Book, but with an emphasis on board games. And the game piece has come out of both work that we've done with high school students who have expressed a lot of interest in making games, but also requests from families who have been really, you know, just wanting more materials and more games that they can play with their children and play together as a family. So this is the group on the last day at their final kind of showcase event they had, where they're showing off some of the board games that they made. We basically ended up having about 4 days with them. The last day was kind of just a morning showcase where they showed the project. So the work that they did, they accomplished in 4 days, which I thought was really pretty impressive for middle school students. They did a really, really fantastic job. And I think a lot of that was because they were super engaged in what they were making. So we just had a kind of the first day where it was set up to have some of the foundation activities, sort of introducing them to Build a Better Book, things like tactile Pictionary. They crafted tactile fables. They played some, we had picked out ahead of time some classic board games. The ones that they ended up choosing are listed here in bold, but then we had a few others that we presented them with, like I think Uno and sort of a Settlers of a Catan dice game. We had a few other games that aren't here, but they worked on these 6: Clue, Battleship, Candyland, Othello, Sorry, and Chutes and Ladders. And then part of what they needed to do, was to just, play those games, figure out what they really needed to modify in order to make the game more accessible. And the technology that we were focused on using, they did a lot, obviously, just with paper and wiki sticks and handcrafted materials. We also had 3D printers, but we really encouraged them to limit it just to the game pieces, because we know from experience it's really hard to get a lot of 3D printing done in a short week of camp. And then we also have a laser cutter available, so they were able to make laser cut boards. But Ian, hearing you talk about the Cricut again, I really need to make sure, like, that would have been perfect for us to allow them to do more troubleshooting and prototyping just using the craft cutter. So I think next year we'll bring that in as an initial step. And then some of them also use Scratch and Makey, and they were primarily using that for making audio dice, so that instead of rolling a dice, you could do a really simple Scratch program to allow them to kind of, with the touch of a button, they get an audio cue to what their number that they just rolled is. And so we had several groups that use that. And so you can see they're kind of designing with Tinkercad. We used a free program called vector.com for designing for the laser cutter. That was the first time we had used Vector, and it seemed to work pretty well. It's a lot simpler than Adobe Illustrator, and it's free. So that worked well. The main modifications they were focused on were creating tactile game boards, tactile playing pieces, Makey dice, and then also using Braille and using other kind of crafted textures to make the boards more accessible. The Chutes and Ladders game on the left, they kind of presented theirs with a cut down the middle, and I was like, you realize this is going to cut your whole board in half? And they were like, well, yeah, it should fold in half like a regular game board. I was like, well, that's brilliant. Why didn't we think of that? So they just used a piece of fabric glued on the back, and they have this nice folding game board that makes it more portable. On the left, here's at the family showcase on the culminating day. It was really fun because parents could play the games with their kids. This dad on the left was such a good sport. He played Battleship with a blindfold on and kind of gave his son a lot of good feedback. So that was really fun. And then we were really fortunate to have kind of lucky timing where the next day after this program ended, we actually hosted a field trip for high school students who were visiting from the Colorado Center for the Blind. So we had about 20 blind teenagers and adults here for the day. And as part of their visit, we had them check out some of the games. And so Othello, which was the game pieces of Othello that we have are already tactile enough to be distinct from black and white sides. And so the board game worked perfectly for the pieces and was a big hit. So we're in the process now of making some additional copies of the games so that we can provide them to the school. We held on to all of the games, but we want to give a set of the games to the school so that they can put up a display in their school library. And CCB, we also want to have teens make some modifications to these prototypes and then send a copy of the updated games to the Colorado Center for the Blind. We are just about out of time, so I'll just run through just really briefly what worked well is that some participants did have some previous experience with the tech we were using, which was really helpful. And we found that this group was really good about utilizing their paper prototypes throughout the experience. So they would kind of grab a blindfold and test things out midway through the camp, which we don't always have or we don't always see kids doing, and so that really helped. Often in our programs, we try to have someone from the community who is blind or visually impaired working with the students throughout the camp. We didn't have that this time, and I do think it makes a big difference to have that input throughout the process. And yeah, next steps I just mentioned earlier. So we are kind of really excited about the potential of games and happy to talk to any of you who are interested in doing projects with games. And then I just wanted to show you a few pictures of some of the books created for the Technology Student Association. About a month ago, was in DC helping to judge the national competition. So these were the high school finalists who placed in their state competition. And I was just blown away by the quality of the projects that came out of this effort. So these were not all projects for students who are blind or visually impaired. A number of them were, but other group, the design challenge was really just to design for a child with a disability. So some kids chose other disabilities to focus on, but the level of graphic design was just amazing, I thought. So just a few beautiful books for you all to see. And just in hearing about why they chose that competition to work on, a number of them really spoke to their interest in writing and art, and that they loved the possibility of this project for blending writing and art with technology and doing it for a purpose. So those are kind of the key things that we kept hearing. And this book on the right was really beautiful. They did a story and it had these amazing illustrations, but it focused on simple machines. And so throughout, each page was like a different machine, but it was an interactive feature. So, this one at the end had gears. There was one with a pulley system that was like this interactive pulley to lift the log off the path. It was really pretty impressive. So I think just a good reminder not to underestimate what teens can do. They can really do some amazing books. And I think in our project, we tend not to do original stories, but in this competition, they had to create their own original story. And I think they just get so invested in that. And it really leads to a lot of kind of pride and investment in those projects. So if you have the time, that might be a cool thing to do. So here is all of our contact information, our social media info for Build a Better Book. I know that we are past time, so sorry for running late, but if anyone has any questions, I think you all have audio. You can unmute yourself and chime in real quick, or you can write something in the chat box as well. And I did see earlier questions about the slides and the webinar, so we'll make both of those available, probably on our website. And Ian and April, thank you so much for sharing what you all have been working on. It's been really exciting to see.
I'm so glad to be a part of this group.
LaShawn, do you have any thoughts or feedback for us on your work at the library?
I sure do. This has been awesome to see what you all have been working on. Here in Maryland, we started a program with a group of teens. In Baltimore City, they have a group called Youth Works. And so it's like a 4-week program. And as we started the program with the youth, what we're running into is that because we're not there consistently, we worked with a full STEAM program and they're running it. And I found that the first prototypes that came out, they were very rough. And the time that they're working, I think it was just a little too fast. So it helped us kind of look at how we want to progress with the program. As we're going forward from the summer, I'm actually opening the Build a Better Book program to public libraries across the state. So I will be presenting to different makerspace groups and public libraries about the program, and they will be working with their teen groups to create these creations. Because I do believe when you have like if you're working in a school and you have a quarter to do the books, you have time to make the books better. And so I think it'll work best if the groups are with them consistently compared to me just popping in for a 2-hour session and seeing what we can produce. So in the public libraries, they're going to offer teens the ability to create these books and also gain service learning hours, because in the state of Maryland, they have to have 75 service learning hours before they graduate. So I'm looking to see what they are able to do, and some of these ideas I would love to share with them of how you all are progressing, but also what they can come up with and create. So it's really taking, it's coming to life, and people are interested. They want to know about the program. They want to know more about how they can get their teams interested in it. And it's just for us, LBPH, getting the word out, being able to train librarians, to train their students or train their patrons, and having a whole schedule. So we're going into maybe January, February of 2020 with schedules of programming with this Build a Better Book here.
Awesome. That sounds great. And yeah, I agree. I think we've certainly run into the same issue where it's definitely a very challenging design task. And so when you see the initial prototypes of what students, are able to do in a short-term workshop, sometimes I think it can seem disappointing because they're not quite up to what, you would feel comfortable sharing with a family. But I think we're starting to do kind of this approach that Ian mentioned as well, where, thinking about how can students, maybe sometimes they want to start from scratch and they want to do their own thing, but a lot of times they're kind of excited to build off of what somebody has started.
Right.
And, you know, we had a couple of high school camps this summer, and we thought we were going to have 15 hours, and it got shrunk to 10, and then it was 8. And we were really worried about, well, what are they actually going to be able to do in that amount of time? And a couple of the groups, we gave them, you know, an assortment of existing projects, like, hey, this has been done with the tactile piece, but we really want to add audio to it. Or it's great, because then I feel like we're actually contributing to some of these projects that are getting closer and closer to where they would need to be to actually sent out to kids and families. So, and I think, Ian, you're right. It's a good exercise, and they're often more willing to critique what somebody else has done, especially if it's somebody they don't know. It makes it easier to see, like, where are the weaknesses. But that's an important part of the process too, of, okay, what's not working yet, and then how can you refine that to make it better? So maybe that's something, I wonder if we want to try to think about separating out our design gallery somehow, where maybe we have like our, you know, like a prototyping page or something where like works in progress could be shared. I don't know, because I think Gigi and I were talking recently, like, what do we do with some of these cool student projects that we don't necessarily feel are ready to go out to a family, but they're a neat idea? Maybe we could have a separate place to put those, because then if a group in our program thinks of something, LaShawn, maybe one of your teams could then take those files and remix them and build on them.
That's true.
Yeah.
I mean,
like a collaboration page or something.
Sometimes when we have multiple copies or versions of the same thing, like I think we have Harold and the Purple Crayon, like one that I think it was Yvonne who did one, and then another school took it and did another iteration of it. So those are just like, I have the main page, and then I have, here's another version at the bottom. But sometimes I think what I'm seeing a lot of people doing are similar types of projects. So it might be nicer to do something like counting books, and then just a whole bunch of different samples of them. And then you can go into counting books and you can pick those. And if you want to might work as well. I don't know. Tell me what you think.
All right, works in progress to think about. I think that, yeah, it should be fun, because I do think it definitely becomes more of a daunting design task, you know, once they get started, but it would be nice to, a lot of times they have these amazing ideas and they get part of the way there, and we don't, their workshop might be done, but we don't want to let that idea drop. And so, you know, figuring out a way to kind of keep that design work going would be great.
Yeah, we focused on, because, you know, there's so many books you can make adaptive. So we focus on what are our schools asking our kids to read for summer reading books. And so it's kind of narrowed down. And then with the field trips, knowing our kids who are visually impaired, I contacted the schools and said, okay, what field trips will kindergarten, first, and third go on? So they sent me their list. So they also go to the children's theater. And so I went and got the list of which ones will they go. So that kind of gave us a focus rather than do whatever you want. And that kind of helps. Now, if a kid's like, I'm really passionate about, you know, comic books, then we'll definitely, you know, let them go where they're passionate, but just kind of give them some suggestions, because we know that they can benefit the learning environment you know, this year because of the grade levels we have.
That is really great. Yeah, I do think that trying to kind of put some boundaries around the projects that they're working on really helps a lot to kind of help jumpstart them, so they're not looking at kind of a blank slate of, okay, I could do anything, but really focusing, narrowing them down. And I think that helped with the games class as well. Basically, you know, giving us a chance to sort of evaluate games and think about, well, which ones would be somewhat doable, like which ones do we think are doable for, you know, this group of kids to work on in a fairly short amount of time. And then it still gave them you know, some choice. So they still got to pick what they wanted to do, but it was within this boundary of something that seemed kind of reasonable to do.
Do we have a list of materials that you all are using, like the Cameo vinyl cutter, which was suggested from the partner that I was working with? I'd never heard about it, and I said, oh, wow, that would be great. So we purchased that for that program, but I'm hearing some of the things that you all are using. Do we have a list of where all the different resources that you all use in your maker spaces that is a possibility in programs that we may do in the future?
You know, we have a section on our website for resources, and we've we've started, I think we haven't updated it in a while, and we've like greatly expanded what we've been doing. So on the resources page, we had started kind of putting kind of instructions or introductory projects for kind of specific things like 3D printing or like makey. But because we've added a number of things since then, we should probably go in and add, you know, some things for the craft cutter and SpecDrums and the laser cutter, or even the 3D pen. So yes, good suggestion. I think we'll get on kind of enhancing that. We have that in a limited space right now, but I think it is not complete. And it was, you know, one of the things that was interesting with the TSA competition, because the kids really, they could use any technology they had access to. So some of those projects were very low tech, some were high tech, and they used a whole range of different software. So I actually, you know, jotted down, they had to, you know, present in their report what technology they used. So I have a whole list of like different software, a lot of which I had never heard of before, but, you know, some of them were using Adobe Illustrator and some were using free drawing and animation, you know, programs that they found online. So we can definitely work on our end to kind of start that. And then it would be great to have other people in the network add to that.
Great, that'd be great.
That may be something, you know, for the resources. You could send it out to us in an email saying, hey, here's what we currently have. Who would be willing to contribute content for a specific tool or thing? And
yes, that would be awesome. We will do that. That's really good. And then one quick thing that I just wanted to ask or get your input on, especially because April brought up the 3Doodler. So we have a couple of people in the network, and actually one woman who is an assistive technologist at a school district in Massachusetts, who we have never met in person. She's just kind of learned about the project via Twitter.
Mindy?
What's that?
Yeah.
Is it Mindy?
Mindy, who does amazing art through her 3Doodler pen. And does a lot of tweeting about the projects that she's worked on to create interactive sets, primarily for books that get checked out by teachers in her district. Anyway, I think, oh, actually, I don't even know that it was Mindy. It was Mindy and another art educator who had kind of tweeted about projects they were doing with kids and using the 3D printing pen. And so 3Doodler, the company, is really interested in collaborating with us this winter to do like a day of, you know, like really to get educators inspired to create tactile enhancements to books and tactile art for kids. And so we're thinking about doing something on National 3D Printing Day, which apparently is 12/3, December 3, 3D.
Oh, that's cool.
And actually this year, December 3rd is actually the is actually the day of giving as well. So it's like a day that a lot of, so it's kind of a nice little twist there. And so we're trying to work with 3Doodler about what that looks like. They have some pens, not the 3D Start that you've been using, April, but like an older model 3D printing pen that they're willing to donate to classrooms that are interested.
Oh, that's cool.
And they're interested in donating some filament as well to support it. I mean, they're looking at it as a marketing thing, right? A PR opportunity, but we love the idea too of helping to get, you know, together our collective networks can help to promote the other, which is exciting. But we're looking to kind of frame what that would be, whether we pick a particular book or whether we would pick a particular theme or a kid's author or, so if you have thoughts on that, we would love input. They initially were really excited to do, kind of have it, I think they initially had seen an art educator who was making tactile representations of Dr. Seuss characters. And so they were initially thinking about doing How the Grinch Stole Christmas, which I both love that idea, but also want to make it broader than just Christmas so that we can be really inclusive for everybody. So, but they really want it to be holiday themed. So I really need a different idea from you all.
Elephant and Piggy.
What's that?
Elephant and Piggy.
Elephant and Piggy.
Because there's no background in Elephant and Piggy, very rare. So it's really just Elephant and Piggy and their expressions for the most part. I'd never really thought about it until my 7-year-old said to me, he asked why there's never any background in the pictures.
Huh.
So I think it would be perfect, Elephant and Piggy, because you just have an elephant and a pig with different expressions, and you could put them on cards, and you can recreate a Mo Willems book, I would think. And each page is not a lot of words either, so you don't have to spend a ton of time either on the verbiage.
In that series, or also the if you give a pig a pancake, if you take a mouse.
Yeah. Oh, because it's about giving.
Series.
National Day of Giving.
Oh, there we go. Because there's quite a few in that series, so that would give some variety too. Yeah.
That could be fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, great. Well, yeah. And as you think about that, if you could kind of, share any other ideas or thoughts you have, we think that'll be fun. So we'll be doing some kind of fall promo kind of stuff to try to get classrooms excited to do that, whether it's art classrooms or engineering or tech classrooms.
Hey, just a kind of idea on that, 'cause I've been doing this with some others or have done it in the past. On that National Day of 3D Printing, it would be cool, not for 24 hours, because that would like kill us all, but it would be cool to set it from like maybe 12 to 3 because of the date, whatever. So at 12 o'clock, come join a come join a, like a campfire conversation and come share how you use your 3D printer. So maybe you organize somebody who will facilitate the conversation in the 12 o'clock hour, the 1 o'clock hour, the 2 o'clock hour. Everybody, just come and, come share your 3D idea or something that you printed with 3D, and, let's just sit around the campfire and talk, for that. It could be longer than 12 to 3, but, I was just thinking that people
I think that's cute. I think that's really cute. Yeah.
You just like come hang out and let's talk. What all can you do with a 3D printer, and share the love in some quick time. But because if you set it for just 1 hour, then a lot of people can't come. So if you kind of out throughout the day, then you get more conversation. You just need somebody that would facilitate the conversation, and if nobody's sharing, be able to share. So.
Right. What about, I've never really done Twitter conversation. I know that sometimes people do like Twitter, like a conversation on Twitter, but I've never really done that.
Yeah, we do them all the time.
And do you find them useful?
Yes.
Yeah?
I have a whole planning template that I will gladly share with you.
All right. We may be signing you up, April.
Okay.
So I actually had a question. I think, April, I know you do, and there may be not enough people on, but several of you have written up sort of program plans or classroom, curriculum sheets, and they're really, really good. And so I'm wondering if it's okay to share those under the resources pages.
Absolutely. If you wouldn't mind sharing it or saying, hey, check this and make sure there's not any updates. Because, I feel like I wrote them a little while back. just to check to see if there's any changes I need to make, but absolutely.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
That'd be great.
That would be really beneficial because I was asked for curriculum, and it takes time to do that. So if you could share that, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay.
That's terrific. All right. Well, I know we've gone way over time, so next time that'll be my note. I'll do 2 presenters, not 3. We'll leave plenty of time for Q&A and discussion. But thanks. It was so fun to hear what you guys have all been doing, and I can't wait to see what happens in Maryland, LaShawn, and
yes.
with your class, April and Rachel. That is just amazing.
Yeah, we're so excited.
So glad to hear that you had such a strong community response to it. That's really awesome.